Noah's Ark 2x2 formation. Red change, down we go, racing for the first time this season. 3 hours of GT action, it's go.
It's very tight as they come down. Group of cars coming in, this has all got trouble written all over it. This is G3 cars.
Drop downhill, they head towards the Aqua Minerale. Imola, of course. There's another one off through the gravel. cover as wide as possible as they drop downhill, putting that truck inside line. Yes, he did. Through he goes.
Apex Online Racing is sponsored by Elgato, who created this lovely stream deck. For more information about the stream deck, the link is in the description below.
Good evening everybody and welcome back to another Apex Online Racing stream here for round 4 at Donington Park. I am John Watts and unfortunately I'm not joined by Tim this week as sadly he could not be here to join me in the commentary box. Hopefully he will be back though next week without any issues, so I will be bringing this one to you solo, but hopefully all will go well and fine. So last week at Brands Hatch we had a very exciting series of battles with Grantas Caracas taking a very dominant victory at the front and heavily cementing himself a good lead in the championship, now with a healthy margin in front of the next place driver of Tommy Brazier, currently sitting in second place, and I believe Jan Garbus currently sitting in P3 in the standings. So a very good showing there from Mr. Consistency himself to make his way into a very commanding position for the championship as it stands. But Donington Park then this week, a night race, the first night race for the season, and that could introduce quite a few extra bits of drama that these drivers maybe aren't quite used to dealing with so far during the season. Donington very tricky on track limits, particularly those S's that we just saw Pitchett go through. It can be difficult enough at the best of times to extract all the lap time possible by clipping each of those apexes perfectly in daylight. When you're following other cars in a dark environment like this, it can be extremely tricky, not just to avoid getting any track warnings and penalties, but to also not end up making a mistake over those curbs and sending you off the track. So it's going to be a tricky one, and we saw quite a bit of action going on last night in Tier 1 in qualifying. Some drivers taking a bit too much liberty with the track limits, and live stewarding meant that they did get some additional time penalties. We won't have live stewarding in this race this evening, but those penalties would likely end up being applied after the race if anyone is found to have done a similar sort of thing. But Tier 2 so far this season has definitely remained the cleaner of the top two tiers, and we've seen some fantastic on-track action with many of these drivers, both at the very pointy end of the grid and all the way down to the back, which is always fantastic to see. And again, it showcases that in AOR, that it doesn't really matter where on the grid you are, you're always going to get a good fight. So transitioning over to qualifying now, and and as I try to work my way through the buttons. Again, unfortunately doing this on a single monitor is not the easiest thing. But I believe that we are up and running and ready to go. So heading out for qualifying now. Donington, it is possible to overtake around here, but qualifying, especially with these nighttime conditions, is going to be extremely important for each of these guys. So first driver out, leading the pack, is going to be Nico Yule. See what he can do in the Audi. I think maybe the only Audi we've got on the grid. Joining us though for this race, just behind him, is Mark Toll, our race winner from Nürburgring, who had an incredibly dominant showing at round 2, and we saw last night just how strong the Porsches are, so it's going to be really interesting to see what he can do in that Porsche this evening, as well as we've got our usual suspects for fast drivers, but I don't think we've got Masoom joining us this evening, which is very unfortunate because we saw the amount of pace that he was able to show in the first couple of rounds, but unfortunately isn't joining us tonight, sadly. But let's hop on board with Mark Toll to take us for a lap around Donington Park. So heading into turn 1 now for going through Redgate and then sweeping our way down the hill through turn 2 and into the Craner Curve. Very tricky section, a lot of commitment has to be had here. Then through the old hairpin, tricky on the entry. You can see the back end of the car trying to get away from him there, as he then carries all that momentum up the hill through turn 5 and then onto the apex of 6, and then immediately hard on the brakes as he heads into McLean's, trying to clip that apex on the inside before using all of the exit there, and then onto the blind entry of Coppice. Tricky traction zone here, as I think that might be Nico Yule's gone off ahead of him. It is. Won't interrupt Mark's lap too much though, as he then heads down towards the S's. Let's see how he tackles this. Maybe a slightly cautious approach initially. That's full attack there from Mark Toll, really nicely through there, and I don't believe, I was going to say I don't believe that invalidated his lap. I haven't got something that suggests that it has, but he's abandoned that one for one reason or another, so we'll finish the lap with Meerveld. So after having gone through the Melbourne hairpin, very tricky braking zone into Goddard's then, and then hard on the power as early as you can, short run to the line, and for Meerveld, the first one to complete a lap is going to be a 26.265 from him, so we'll see how that stands up against other drivers. They're bringing in their efforts, and it looks like a pretty good early effort there from the McLaren driver. Last night it generally looked like the Porsches and the BMWs were the cars to beat, also slightly dependent on the speed of each of those drivers, and I think we've got some pretty quick drivers in this tier in the McLarens as well, so we might see the McLaren maybe a bit more towards the pointy end of the field. A car though that we haven't seen quite this high before is that lovely number 95 Lightning McQueen inspired Aston Martin of Yannick Rohr, currently sitting quite solidly inside the top 10, as Marlon is the first driver to put an effort in that pips Meerveld to the post, just 15 thousandths of a second faster than the McLaren driver, and we saw Marlon have great amounts of pace at round 2. Unfortunately couldn't quite showcase it in the race because of his penalty at the beginning and the contact. Oh, as he then loses it through old hairpin. Gets it nicely recovered, but that will definitely be that lap off the cars. Let's see what Mark Toll is doing, because I do think he will be quick, and he is quick. Goes up into provisional pole by almost 0.3 of a second there. First driver, and currently the only driver, to break into the 25s. Does a 25.835. Marco Yonkers had a solid effort at Brands Hatch. He's just dropped down to P3, as Oliars, our pole sitter from round 1, has slotted into P2. A car that we've seen have a bit better form last week, and again seems to be looking like he's pretty quick, so it'll be interesting to see what sort of effort he can put together but Mark Toll already looking very, very quick. Just slotting in behind him though, Ben Keys. A good effort from him as well. I think he had a fairly solid showing at Brands Hatch, and currently sitting in 3rd place on 26.1, so that's a good lap there from him. Let's see who else is on their way to finishing a lap. Let's hop on board with who have we got? As my timing board decides to go all over the place a bit, let's go on board with Marco Yonkers, see what he can do, if he can improve on his lap at all heading into the final corner. Now, in actual fact, he's going to be setting up a lap, so it'll be interesting to keep an eye on how he does with this one. As Mark Toll does improve on his effort, though, he's going to pull over for the time being because he's gone and done a 25.75, and I believe purple in all 3 sectors potentially, so that is a fantastic lap there from him, further cementing that current pole position effort, having a margin of almost 0.3 of a second, actually over 0.3 of a second, excuse me, over Marcin Oliar. So we'll see how long that time lasts. Yonkers going a little bit wide on the exit of Old Hairpin there. Whether or not that's invalidated his lap, I'm not entirely sure, but still pushing on for the time being. Let's see who else we've maybe got finishing a lap in the meantime. We'll hop back to Marco Yonkers in just a moment. I think Totev, I was looking for the 177. Ah, there we go, Shooter. Let's see how Shooter 80 is getting on. 27.4 on that last effort from him, so not quite going to be enough to move him up the order, but currently sitting a little bit higher than he was last week at Brands Hatch, so he'll be pleased with that improvement. As who else is finishing a lap at the moment? We've got Kamenev in the number 54 Ferrari SMP Racing eSport car, looking very nice in that livery, can't quite see it too nicely. And again, he is actually going to be setting up a lap. But interestingly, somebody that is currently sitting a bit out of position, and I think is on a flyer, is our race winner and current championship leader, Grantis Karekas. Hasn't finished off the podium once this season so far. Currently down in P17, but I think based on his last lap delta that this is going to be a flying lap from him. So let's see how hard does he attack this chicane. That looked pretty nice there, maybe slightly conservative, maybe just looking to build up speed. Still got over 5 minutes of qualifying left, so can afford to maybe be a bit more reserved in these earlier couple of efforts. Sitting just ahead of him actually in the current order is Tommy Razier, so he'll be looking to move his way up as well. But Karekas, what is it going to be as he crosses the line? It's good enough for P7 on a 26.2. So not the maybe the fastest pace from him just yet. We'll see if he pushes on any harder, but a good effort also from Ben Keys to be the second driver to get himself into the 25s, and in the Ferrari no less. So that's a really quite a strong showing there from Ben Keys, so it'll be interesting to see if he manages to maintain that sort of position towards the end of this qualifying session, but a good effort there from him. Let's see how Jan Climbs is getting on. Currently sitting just outside of the top 10. We can see if he can get that Porsche. We know it's a fast car around here. See if he can get that car to be a bit further up the order as he heads through McLean's. Very tricky series of corners there. Donington, such a high commitment circuit, a bit of the theme actually of the British GT tracks. When you look at Donington, Brands Hatch, Silverstone, and the ones that aren't featuring on the calendar, Alton Park and Snetterton, they're all circuits that really are incredibly unforgiving, and it really does test the limits of these drivers' capability, the amount of time they put into the setup to see how much performance they can extract from the car and how consistently they can lap that car during the race. So we'll see what Jan is able to do as he looks to round off this lap. He's got Alexis just ahead of him as Mark Toll looks like he is pulled off to the side of the road. So he'll be looking to head to the pits, and Jan is going to do a 26.5, so just 0.03 of a second slower than his personal best, and maybe struggling to just eke out any of that remaining pace from his car. Yannick Rohr still sitting in P9 in the top 10, so that is again quite a notable performance as he's now dropped down to P10, of course, as commentator cursed him. But strong showing there from the Aston, so be interesting to see if he can keep that car up there and how that car behaves during the race. Aston, usually quite a nice car to have during the race, very stable, very consistent, usually manages its tyres quite well too, so it'll be interesting to see if he can capitalise on that side of things. So who do we have improving? I think we've got Matt York on quite a large improvement here. According to my Delta, he's several tenths up, and that will take him to P19, 26.7, so definitely an improvement, but not quite able to extract the pace out of that Bentley car as he was able to do at Brands Hatch. So he'll be looking to see if he can get any additional pace. Currently lead Bentley is Makovkin in P15, and still as of right now, the likes of Tommy Rozier are sitting down in P16. He is on quite a significant improvement though on this lap, and if you look at the margins between P1 and P16, it's about 0.8 of a second. But if he just manages to find a few tenths, he could very quickly find his way towards the top 5. So he'll be looking to try to carry some good momentum through this lap. How much does he decide to attack at the S's? I don't think that was the most aggressive of lines, but it looked fairly safe and consistent. And right now he does need to just get a good lap in there. Looks like he's still up on his personal best. That looked like quite a nice hairpin from him then as he heads towards Goddard. Such a tricky corner, very easy to get a bit too greedy on the entry and run a bit wide. Cut back nicely hard on the power. So he runs it towards the line, and from Tommy it's going to be good enough for P4, 26.052. That is where we expect to see him a bit more. So good effort there. Should, if he's got enough fuel, should have enough time for 2 more efforts, but got to be careful about the tyre wear, as that was a lot of bumpiness there from Marlon as he came through the S's, really attacking that final chicane, and also with his lights on that Ferrari livery, getting a nice halo effect in these evening conditions, but whether or not they provide him any better visibility, I highly doubt, as yeah, it looks like he's going to abandon that last effort, try to set himself up for a good run for what could be 2 more laps, depending on how much fuel he's got left. But I think Marlon's got a bit of extra time in the tank. He's only 100th of a second behind Ben Keys at the moment, so he'll be looking to try to improve and get his way up onto the front row if he can. But got to be careful about the S's. It's amazing how much time you can gain or lose. Ben Keys, though, our first driver, I think, that has returned to the pit, so that is going to be the best effort from him. But currently, as it stands, though, 2 Ferraris within the top 5, 2 McLarens, and only 1 Porsche. So a very different pointy end of the field tonight that we've got as Tommy Rozier goes and improves up into P2. That will be his last effort, getting to the lower end of a 25.8 and not too far away from Mark Toll. But I say that, if my Delta is correct, I think Mark Toll might be on quite a handy lap indeed, running down towards the S's now. Might throw everything in the kitchen sink at it this time. Oh, a bit too much there, and loses the car on the exit. You can see that is how easily done it is for him to lose the back end there. Oliars finishing his lap, took a very early entry to that final corner there, unconventional line in comparison to the rest of the drivers, but still good enough for him to improve up to P5 on a 25.9. Could have been P4, maybe even P3, given how tight these margins are if he had got a better line through there. Let's see what Connor Wright can do. Currently our lead BMW. Looks like he might be on quite good improvement as he heads through Goddard for the last time. This could be quite a good lap from Connor. What's it going to be as he gets towards the line? P4. Fantastic effort there from him as he pips his Van Wall Simsport teammate of Marlon to that position. So 2 of their drivers sitting inside the top 5, so they'll be pleased with that effort. But a good showing there from Connor, representing the BMW cars quite nicely there, because I don't think we've got another BMW until we get down to Christian Steinhauser in P17. So a very, very different sort of setup of grid we're seeing tonight. But that is going to make it interesting for us to watch. Also of note, Makovkin making his way into the top 10 with the Bentley, unless Terminen can potentially put a better lap together. No, he must have invalidated it along the way somewhere. So that will be it for qualifying. So Mark Toll, I thought he might be one to watch, and he proved me right. A very, very strong showing from him again. But that McLaren, Tommy Rozier, and likewise Ben Keys and the drivers behind, really not too far away. So we'll have to see how that translates into the race. Just trying to move ourselves into the next session. As I believe that is now all in working order. So it will be Mark Toll to get started at the front once again. So he missed the last race, but he is certainly on fine form again, and showcasing the power and speed that Porsche can have. Definitely suiting his driving style, setup and car this week. P2 on the grid and P2 in the championship as well. Tommy Rozier putting his name near the front again. It'll be interesting to see what he can do. We saw him obviously take that victory at round 1 with a very daring strategy. Will we see a similar thing again from him? Undercut and overcuts did look fairly strong yesterday in Tier 1, but it's really quite difficult to overtake around here, so haven't quite maybe got the same levels of strategic opportunities as we saw at Paul Ricard. Ben Keys, very good showing from him to be the lead Ferrari and get up to P3, followed by Connor Wright, our first M4, and first M4 for quite a while, followed by his Van Wall Simsport teammate Marlon Andrade. No, I shouldn't actually say no such penalties to start with this week. We'll see what the penalty situation is potentially once they start to get added in, if there are any at all. Marcin Oliars, our pole sitter from round 1, currently sitting in P6, and a good showing at Brands Hatch. We're looking to continue that form. And then Yannick Ruoff, strong showing in the Aston Martin. So very good effort from him, and be interesting to see what he can do with that car. Bit of a different sort of approach with the setup, the driving style, how it takes care of its tyres, and that could really potentially play into his hands during the race. Marco Jonkers in P8 with fan favourite Vince van Meerveld P9, and Grantis Caracas, our championship leader, was not able to put in a particularly strong lap there at the end of qualifying, so starting in P10 he'll be looking to make his way up the grid if he wants to try to stop Tommy from eating too much into that championship lead. Leonard Makovkin in P11, our first Bentley, followed by Jan Garbus. P12, maybe a little bit further down than he was hoping for after a strong showing from him at Brands Hatch. Yang Gang, next driver in the Porsche, extraordinarily actually in P13. So some really big gaps between the cars. Zorax then starting in P14. Good showing from him actually. I think that might be his personal best in qualifying. Astruch in P15, followed by Jan Klimes. Christian Steinhauser still not quite able to find that level of pace that we saw him have last season in Tier 2. Currently sitting in P17. See what he can do during the race. Followed by Pitchik, again similar sort of story with him. See if he can improve from there. Then we've got Kamenev in P19, Jay Fang in 20th, followed by Matt York. He'll be a bit disappointed with that result, I think, from qualifying. Was very strong last week at Brands Hatch, particularly in the second part of that race. Had a very good race pace Totev starting behind him in 22nd, although I've got 20 seconds on my leaderboard. I'm not quite sure what's happening there, as the next car on my screen should be Nico Yule, but I think he may have left for service, so I'm not sure what's happened there, but it looks like we might be missing Nico again, which is very unfortunate and disappointing. I don't know if he disconnected or what exactly happened there, but that's very unfortunate. Our only Audi... Sheldon Muscat is his other Audi compatriot, but yes, it's very disappointing to be missing him from the grid. Alex Torregrossa starting in 24th. Again, maybe a bit disappointed with that result. Ex-Tier 1 driver from, I believe, last season, so he'll be looking to see if he can make his way up the order a bit. Sheldon Muscat in 25th. Yuko Terminen down in 26th. Benjamin King in 27th. Yazpaski in 28th. Vioris in the beloved anime Bentley down in 29th. James Cowley in 30th, and then seemingly starting from the pits. I'm not sure if this is a repeat of what happened to Terminen last week of not gridding in time, but Dylan Goslin already in the pits, so we'll have to see if he starts from the pits or if that is a very early retirement from him. But these drivers now making their way through the formation lap and seeing Tim, my normal co-commentator for AOR, in the chat, and I am gutted that you can't be in the comms box tonight too, buddy. I hope you get better soon, and that we can continue our broadcast together for next round onwards. But yes, wish you the best with a speedy recovery. But these drivers now finishing their formation lap. So you can see Mark Toll trying to get as much warmth into those tyres as possible, as I think Marlon maybe slightly out of position there, getting a bit greedy with the on and off throttle stages. You can get away with that in this game, but now slowing himself down quite considerably to get his car back into that P4 position, as a pole already goes flying. So there's one marker for the dangerous S's that's already gone. And these guys are now starting to speed up a bit as they get themselves into formation then. So an hour of this race, hopefully it will be a clean start. It's so tricky in these conditions with such a tightly packed field, not just in terms of pace, but quite a narrow track and a narrow opening series of corners as well for these guys, as they all start to get themselves lined up towards the final corner. Have to see what that Porsche acceleration is able to do off the start. You have to think that the advantage might be with Mark Toll, but if Tommy can do something special, maybe he can challenge towards turn 1. So let's see what that is going to do.
Green light,
and they are away from the line. Mark Toll looks like he has got a good start there. And we'll look towards the helicam just to get an overview of the action. Mark Toll holding on to that position. It looks like Connor Wright coming under a bit of pressure there from his teammate, looking to snatch some positions off him. No yellow flags just yet, although the number 65 does look like they've dropped off the back. I'm not sure who that is exactly. It's getting very tightly bunched up through his next series of corners. I think that was Oliars getting all sorts of caught up there. Just behind Yannick Ruoff, putting Marlon under all sorts of pressure, as well as Oliars and Yonkers going side by side, as then Korekka's trying to take advantage of that and seeing if he can get a move done going into Coppice corner, and he does. Yonkers dropping back a bit there, as then we've also got, I think that's Meerveld and Makovkin going side by side on the exit of Coppice there as well. Meerveld feeling the need to go defensive. Oh, there's contact there between Garbus and Makovkin. Thankfully manages to keep it all together, as then there's all sorts of bunching going on behind them. I think that Jan Klein's making use of the bunching there, as then someone's trying to go down the inside. You've got to be so careful with the concertina effect. I think that's one of the Bentleys. That might be Pitchick. It is trying to go down the inside of... Is that Benjamin King? No, it's not Benjamin King. I can't exactly work out who that is. But Doesn't look like he's been able to make that move work, as then it looks like we've got the Audi of Sheldon Muscat going side by side with one of the BMWs. He'll be looking to see if he can make a move down towards turn 1, as he does look like he gets that on the inside, unless he'll be challenged on the exit. It doesn't look like it. Meanwhile, in the pits, Benjamin King has come into the pits then, so not sure what happened to him. And it was Mac York, the number 65 car, that went around at the beginning of lap 1, so he'll be looking to recover that if he can. Mark Toll already having completely checked out from the drivers behind him, so he is looking to get a strong repeat of what we saw at the Nürburgring with his performance, as Connor right now looking to put all sorts of pressure there onto Tommy Rozier. Not going to be able to make anything happen going towards the S's. Maybe runs a bit wide, definitely runs too wide there, as Ben Keys maybe might be looking to take advantage of that, and he is going to be putting Connor right under all sorts of pressures. He looks to go around the outside. It's a difficult one to make it work, and he might run out of room there, and Marlon might think about getting a run. It looks like he's too far back for that. Is Keys going to think about sending anything into the final corner? Not quite. Takes quite a conservative line there as we look back to Korekes. He's made his way up into P8, so again showing some good racecraft there from him. He needs to consistently make up those positions if he wants to minimise that damage in the championship. Ruoff has nicely maintained his position as well, and is currently sitting quite happily, as he runs a little bit wide actually on the exit of the first corner. Is currently sitting in P6, so a strong effort so far from him, but might be coming under pressure momentarily from Grantis Korekes, who is very, very fast, always tends to have extremely good race pace. Maybe doesn't put it together in qualifying, but is very, very consistent and fast in the race, and he does look like the faster car out of the pair of them. Can he get a good run out of Coppice and puts Ruoff under pressure as they head towards the S's? We've seen McLaren have good straight line speed in the past. Have to really be firmly alongside though if you want to make that work. I don't think he's going to be able to, as there's a yellow flag somewhere. That's the 65 again of Matt York, and I believe that's Kamenev. So contact between them, and I suspect Matt York may be responsible for that contact, as he did seem to wait. The 777 is also around. That is Totev, who's disconnected from the server, is now Meerveld under pressure from, I think that's Jan Kleins going down the inside of him, and unable to defend that position. Or was that Yang Gang? Actually, that was Yang Gang, excuse me, that made that move. And now there's a Struch looking to put some pressure onto Meerveld as well, but not able to do too much yet. Looking back towards the front though, we've got Korekes, who amongst all of that has made his way in front of Ruoff. So fantastic early stuff from him then. Less than 5 minutes, he's gained 4 positions, exactly what he needed to do, and make his way up into P6 as he'll now look to go charging after Malandrade, as Oliaz showing a little bit of inconsistency through the exit of the old hairpin there. Running wide, could be so careful about slow punctures around here as well. Very, very easily done. So looking to try and see if he can keep that gap ahead of Marco Yonkers, who isn't quite able to do too much just yet. Let's have a look back to Struch and Meerveld as this battle is getting very interesting between these 3 McLarens. We've got Meerveld, Struch and Zorax all fighting together as they head down towards the S's. Struch showing his nose as they head towards the S's. I don't think Meerveld will be too afraid of that one, and in fact, Meerveld actually ran a little bit wide on the exit then. Things about going defensive. Struch has a little bit of a look, got to be careful, don't want to see the sorts of contact that we had before, as I think we've got, I think that's Vioris trying to go down the inside of James Cowley in that Bentley, and as Steinhauser is in this battle as well, so he's dropped away from his grid position, but is looking to see if he can maybe capitalise on the Lexus. And Bentley going side by side, there was almost collision there between Steinhauser and Vioris. Bentley sometimes a little bit leery on the power, but does keep it under control for the time being. Just having a quick look at the front. Connor Wright still putting Tommy Rozier under a good amount of pressure, but not able to do too much just yet. This train of Oliaz Ruoff spreading out a little bit as well. as it looks like the main fight at the moment is this train of 4 cars with Christian Steinhauser trying to see if he can close up onto that Bentley. Looks very, very capable on the brakes as Vioras gets a little bit of a wonky line over the apex, takes quite a significant bump there, but is able to make it work. Just ahead of them though, Jay Fang coming under pressure from Shooter 80. Good showing from Shooter already to make his way into the top 20. Can he get a good run through the chicane? That wasn't a fantastic exit there for Jay Fang, but I think he will be safe for the time being. But Astruch under pressure there from Zorax, looking to make a move. Astruch trying to see if he can carry that momentum on the outside and then defend as they head towards Goddard's. That Bentley of Pitchick. Oh, maybe a bit too much there from Astruch. It's going to be a cutback from Zorax, and it's going to be a drag race as they head towards turn 1. It's going to be difficult though for Zorax to pull that one off around the outside of turn 1. Pitchick be rubbing his hands together, seeing if he can get involved in this somehow. Astruch again covers that inside line. Does Zorax think about cutting back? He does, as they head now towards the Craner Curves. Really difficult section, go side by side, but that momentum, he carries it through and gets the overtake done well before turn 4. So a good side-by-side fight between those two there. Pitchick, oh, and Sheldon Muscat really pushing the limits there on the exit of turn 4. Again, got to be so careful not to just push that a bit too hard. With less than 10 minutes into this race, as Muscat runs very wide there through McLean's. Not going to be under too much pressure though from Jay Fang behind as we cut ahead to Oliars and Yonkers still. Oh, Oliars losing it on the entry. I don't think that was a touch from Yonkers. I think he just lost the back end, just carried a bit too much momentum, and I think Makovkin is going to get him as well. As Makovkin runs a little bit deep under brakes, actually, that might give an opportunity for Oliars to come back, but no. Shuts the door on him, and Oliars losing 3 positions there through just one small mistake, and that's now allowed Yonkers to start attacking the back of that Aston Martin. Meanwhile, Grantas Caracas has pushed on ahead and has almost locked onto the gearbox of the Ferrari of Marlon. Marlon not having the strongest showing of pace that we've seen from him. Current fastest lap of the race actually sits with Connor Wright, our lead BMW by over 15 positions. Has got the fastest lap on a 27.0, but the consistency of Mark Toll out in front has been extraordinary, and he's been able to maintain a 3.5 second lead in front of those other guys. Caracas though putting a lot of pressure onto Marlon. Marlon getting a little bit caught over the curb there. Don't think it'll be susceptible quite yet, but he's got to be careful. We already saw how much time you can lose if you don't get a good run through the S's. How does Marlon fare through here? Or maybe a little bit deep. You can see visibly the amount of extra speed that Caracas is able to carry. That, I suspect, is where he is gaining a lot of his time. Was the fastest car on track the last lap round, so Caracas clearly has pace and is trying to make a move on Marlon. This is the closest he's been so far. Does he think about something into Goddard's? No. Marlon looks to take a bit of an early entry there, but that will compromise his exit. Can Caracas get a good run on him as they head towards turn 1? He'll be too far back for that one, so not looking like he'll be able to do anything just yet. But Marlon runs very, very deep and has a moment on the exit, and it looks like Caracas is going to be able to get that move done very early indeed. So Marlon does look like he's struggling a bit for performance at the moment, and that meant that Caracas was able to get the move done. Grantas doesn't need a second invitation, and he took full advantage of that there. Meanwhile, Yannick Ruoff coming under increasing pressure from the McLaren. Maybe the Aston Martin hasn't got quite the level of race pace on those tyres, as it looks like in the background, just coming back for a moment. Muscat, I think, maybe made a mistake. We saw him made a mistake on the exit turn 4 before, and I think he just lost 2 positions there to Shooter 80 and Jay Fang, as they are both now ahead of him, and that drops him back to P19, so he'll be frustrated with that. As then Shooter 80, contact there as they head through Coppice. Sheldon Muscat getting into the back of Shooter as Shooter took a very aggressive line there through Coppice. Muscat now having to defend from Steinhauser towards the S's. This could all end in tears. They try to head side by side. There's contact in the middle of the corner. Muscat's gone round. The Urus manages to avoid it. Oh, and the Lexus in the background. I'm not sure who that was. I think that was Terminen. It was Terminen collecting him there. There was nothing that the Lexus could do. That was always going to be an optimistic bit of side-by-side racing there between Steinhauser and Sheldon Muscat, and it did end in tears there. The Bentley did a very good job of avoiding him. I think that was Robert Vioris did an exceptional job being the first car to arrive on the scene there, managed to avoid making contact, but unfortunately the same could not be said as Connor Wright, who put in an extremely fast last lap. The only driver to do a 27.0 as Mark Toll actually lost half a second on that last lap. Still has a healthy advantage, but maybe making a mistake of his own there. But Connor Wright looking very, very fast in that BMW, maybe looking to come a bit more alive as the race progresses on. We saw the likes of Niels Nielsen in Tier 1 yesterday. His car really came alive in the second stint, as that was a mistake there from Tommy, and Connor Wright is going to get the move done before they even get to Melbourne Hairpin. And as long as he doesn't run too wide, and he doesn't, Connor Wright gets the move done for P2. So fantastic stuff from there, and that plays into Karekis' hands as well, as he'll be very pleased to see that his championship rival losing a position up at the front there, as Karekis hasn't been able to make too much progress over these last couple of laps. And definitely at the moment, as Connor Wright actually set the fastest lap of the race on that last lap, but he wasn't particularly compromised during that overtake with Tommy, as he was able to effectively take the racing line. But Connor Wright looking extremely fast as a yellow flag through the crane of curves there. That is Benjamin King that has gone off, as there's somebody else, I think. As that's Vince van Meerveld that's round. Meerveld has gone round and is currently sitting right in the middle of the circuit, gets the car going again and will rejoin. I think maybe Benjamin King went off in reaction to Meerveld's car. Didn't exactly see how that unfolded. But Meerveld going around, I don't think they were too close on track to start with, so I think that may have been something to do with that. I was hoping the replay might show us how that action started, but unfortunately not in that case, and we saw that did affect King as well. He was able to rejoin further up the field, as I think looking at it, actually, by the looks of it, he then retired to the pit lane, so he was a lap down. And that'll be very interesting to see how that has played into things regarding the rest of the grid order. But Meerveld getting caught up there and dropping very much down the order. My time board sorts itself out again, but still looking very, very fast is Connor Wright. Took another 0.2 of a second, was pretty much matched for pace actually by Tommy Rosirso, as he runs a little bit wide on the exit of turn 4 there. But these two guys have still got some pretty solid pace, but Mark Toll maybe starting to struggle a little bit on tyres. We'll have to see how that pans out. We'll have to see what Connor maybe thinks about doing on strategy, because it does look like he has some very good pace underneath him. So does he think about trying to go for an undercut of sorts? We shall have to see. We've got a Struch under some pressure from pitching there. In the meantime, we've got Makovkin battling with Jan Garbus and Marcin Olyars. Both of those McLarens having stronger showings at Brands Hatch. Olyars making that mistake a little bit earlier on and making it difficult for him to recover some of those positions. Has generally held on to that position ever since, so has seemingly got quite consistent pace. Actually did his fastest lap of the race on the last lap. It doesn't look like he's got quite the outright pace, as Garbus looking very racy there behind the Bentley of Makovkin, and I think Time Board still working its way through there. So it's a shame that we didn't get to see what happened with Meerveld and Benjamin King in that instant down in turn 4. But looking in the meantime, Robert Vioris, having been able to avoid that stranded Audi of Muscat through the S's, now looking to put pressure onto Shooter 80, as then we've also got Cowley coming under pressure from, I think that's Jarzabowski, or Jarzabowski, excuse me, putting him under pressure as well. So we've got a couple of fights here for the tail end of the top 20. Gap widening a bit there between the BMW and the Bentley, but it does look like there's some good pace in that Ferrari behind that Lexus. It's a little bit heavier over the curb than I think he would have liked that. It would have compromised his speed, but does look a lot more confident under braking. But that Lexus, a very difficult car to pass at times, as we've got Jay Fang, and I'm assuming that is Muscat. Are they battling, or is that... I think Muscat is a lap down. So I think we've got Muscat maybe trying to unlap himself. He's got to be very careful here not to get in the way, as he then does look like he pulls to the side there to let Steinhauser pass. Yet Muscat is indeed a lap down, so he won't be particularly getting too much involved in this battle. Let's see what we've got going further up the order. Yonkers still putting lots of pressure onto Yannick Ruoff, not able to get past that Aston just yet, as Korekis in the meantime has done some pretty good laps over the last couple and was actually the fastest driver on the circuit last lap, so he's finding his feet again a bit and trying to make that gap to the Ferrari of Ben Keys a bit smaller, as I think Struch and the Bentley of Pitchik getting a bit closer than one another again, as the number 15 car. Who is that? That is Muscat, who by the looks of it has retired from the race, so that is going to be his day done. It all went wrong earlier on with that contact through the S's with Steinhauser, as Korekis has got a drive-through. Korekis has got a drive-through. I can only imagine that's for track limits, because I haven't seen him involved in an instant, but that is disastrous. Had such a good drive so far to get his way up into P5 and was looking like he could challenge maybe even a podium, but that is absolutely catastrophic, and that is going to ruin his chances of getting a good result here. So, well, maybe it was a curse waiting to happen. Mr. Consistency has unfortunately fallen to the slightly difficult to manage track limits here at Donington, and heavily dampened his chance of being able to maintain such a good championship lead leaving here. That's going to give Razier a very, very good opportunity to make his way up into the fight, as well as Mark Toll, who still leads this race up at the front with a decent margin to Connor. Although Connor on that last lap was absolutely rapid. The first 26 of the race, and it seems the more as this race goes on, the faster Connor is getting, and maybe he has got something to say about Mark Toll having another dominant win. So we'll have to keep an eye on those gaps and whether or not Mark Toll thinks about maybe going for an early pit stop here, as that was very, very close there between Yonkers and Ruoff, who have closed up quite rapidly onto the back of Marlon, as there's also a battle in the background going on between Oliars and McCoffkin, looking very tight between them, as McCoffkin seeing if he can get cut back, making a bit of contact on the apex there and losing momentum, as McCoffkin and Garbus dive into the pits there. Very, very tight margins between those two, and McCoffkin may look to repair that bit of damage. Just got a little bit enthusiastic on the throttle going through that corner, and just tap the back of Oliars then. Expect it to be too severe in contact, as Ruoff now has managed to break away a little bit as he gets all sorts of over the exit curb there of turn 4, and it does look like Marlon is struggling for pace, as the tyres are maybe just falling away from him. Ben Keys has managed to hold on to the back of Tommy Razier pretty well over these last laps, although he did lose quite a large amount of time on the last lap. But Korekis, with that drive-through, has absolutely removed his hopes of being able to challenge anything. And you can see that through the duration of the lap, the different cars perform well in different areas. Ruoff was starting this lap on the back of Andrade, and now he's got Yonkers all over his gearbox. Had a little bit of a late move there, defending towards the inside. I imagine the Yonkers may not be too happy about that, but was still all okay and generally above board. Marlon going a little bit deep through Goddard's then. But it seems that Ruoff is quite good in his opening sector as Ben Keys has come into the pits. Who else have we got? Korekis serving his drive-through. Oliars is coming into the pits as well to get a new fresh set of tyres, make his way actually should keep an eye on where he emerges, because Makovkin and Garbus both came in to do their pit stop. So it'll be interesting to see where they end up coming out, as it looks like those two have maybe been battling on this last lap. That will help Oliars maintain the position if he looks to try to keep it. These guys coming into the final sector now as Jan Garber sends it towards the Melbourne hairpin down the inside. Very, very late braking there from him. Gets it pulled up on the exit. Makovkin now making a little bit of contact as they head towards Goddard's. This is unnecessary. You need to keep your head in these situations. I think Makovkin trying to keep Garbus there on that inside line. And where is Oliars? He is down towards turn 1 already, and you can see that battling between those guys has cost them dearly and given Oliars really a free pass to maintain that position. He looked like he was struggling for pace, but those two battling has cost them very, very significantly. In the meantime, we've got Ruoff putting, or being put under a lot of pressure, I should say. Once again, from Yonkers, Connor Wright has come into the pits now. So crucially, he is into the pits before Mark Toll. How much of an undercut is he going to be able to potentially get? Someone else diving into the pits. That was Zorax in the background there. Ruoff running a little bit wide, and this is the closest I think Yonkers has been all race so far. Firmly on the gearbox as they head through the Craner curves. Can you do anything through turn 4? We've seen Ruoff make a mistake here before. No such luck this time for Yonkers as they then climb up the hill. Steinhauser also going into the pits as well. You see that Aston Martin, good speed up the climb towards McLean's, is able to use the power of that Aston as he then runs a little bit wide through Coppice, struggling there with the front tyres by the looks of it. Just maybe that front engine car not quite able to get the same level of grip at this stage in the race as those tyres fade. That's very, very close there from Yonkers as they close up through the S's. Is he going to be able to do anything? Not quite this time. And we'll see how that battle fares. I think Mark Toll has responded to Connor Wright coming into the pits then, as this battle though is still continuing as Yonkers heads towards the inside as they get to Goddard's. And do either of them considering to pit? Ruoff does. Ruoff does decide to come into the pits, and probably a wise move. So as soon as Yonkers has made the move, that has removed the opportunity there for that battle to continue. But Yonkers, fantastic dive there from him. Now let's have a look at Connor Wright. Where is he going to emerge on the circuit? See Meerveld in the chat. Yes, unfortunately we didn't quite catch on the stream what happened with your car being stranded through turn 4, so it'd be great if you could enlighten us as to what happened there. But yes, very disappointing result for you. And as for enabling the gaps on the timing board, if I'm totally honest, I'm not entirely sure how to do it, and I'm too scared of ruining stuff for the stream. So I shall try to keep you posted as best as I can with the gaps. But Connor right now heading towards turn 1. Where is Mark Toll? Mark Toll is just coming out of the pits now, so he is massively behind. He has lost a huge amount of time there. So extraordinarily, and Tommy Razier has got him as well. So I don't know if Mark Toll maybe, I doubt he had damage to repair because there wasn't really anyone close to him on the circuit, but maybe just missing his pit box. And Mark Toll has completely lost out, and even lost out to Ben Keys as well. So after having such a commanding position in the early stage of the race, Mark Toll has fallen down miserably to what is effectively 4th position. So a disaster bit of strategy there from him. Can he use that incredible pace that we know he has in his car to make his way further towards the front? Korekes has served his drive-through. I believe, though, that he might still be yet to pit. I'm not 100% sure. I would have expected him to fall further down the order with a drive-through and a pit stop, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. But definitely the biggest story, the biggest story since Korekes' drive-through, Mark Toll with a disastrous pit stop there in some form or another, as everyone else coming into the pits, and keep an eye on Marlon to see where he is going to emerge. Was battling very heavily with the likes of Ruoff. Let's see where Ruoff is. Ruoff has got ahead of him, and Olyars looks like he might be about to get Marlon as well, as he does. Marlon then losing positions as well, so it looks like that undercut is extremely powerful, and that has enabled several drivers to make up positions. We'll have to see how their tyres fare later on in the race. We saw that the tyres did seem to fade in particular for Andrade quite severely, so maybe that later pit stop will help him on the lighter fuel in this latter stage of the race maintain some decent pace. But unfortunately, that has seen him drop many positions, and it's only now Yonkers out front who has just come into the pits. I'm seeing that we've got a Struch and Shooter 80 as well out the front, as well as Jarzabowski, so Shooter also comes into the pits. But let's keep an eye on where Yonkers is going to come out. He was battling with the likes of Yannick Ruoff, who's just making his way through the Melbourne hairpin at the moment. So he's just coming into Goddard's. It looks like Meerveld in the chat has some sort of technical issue, and unfortunately, yeah, just making a mistake with Benjamin King involved there. So yeah, very disappointed for your race to end like that. As Yonkers, though, has he made the overcut work? Oh, contact through turn 1. Ruoff spinning Yonkers, and disaster. Oh, that's a difficult rejoin for the pair of them, as they then lose position between them. And that was very unfortunate contact there. So we see we'll go on board with Ruoff on the replay there to see what that was like from his point of view. Heading towards turn 1. Surprisingly, Yonkers, even with the overcut, was able to come out ahead. And that was a late dive there from Ruoff, and just went maybe slightly wide of the apex than he was hoping for. Yonkers could have left a bit more space potentially, but did generally look like a bit of a victim there of the desperate dive from Ruoff. So unfortunate contact there. No one really did anything too wrong amongst all of that, but it was just enough for it to be a disastrous bit of contact there. We've now got Makovkin, and I think that's Zorax potentially going side by side towards the S's. We've seen this ending disaster once. We've got Makovkin go wide, making a move technically a bit off the track there, so Zorax may not be too happy about that, as then Ruoff is looking to make contact with another car, getting all sorts of hung up there. It's getting bunched up, familiar of the disasters that we saw in Tier 1 yesterday, as Korekes is involved in this as well. I was going to say they're making an effort to make a move, but Zorax now trying to get past, I think that's the BMW of Toro Grossa, as I think Pitchik is involved in this battle as well. So all of a sudden 0 to 100 with these guys after the pit stop, and I think that was definitely a bit more on Ruoff this time around. And unfortunately, the hairpin, as we saw, that was the incident that allowed Jardier to go from 4th to 1st in just one corner, ends up in disaster for these guys, with about 7 cars getting bundled together there, as Oligars runs very wide through Coppice, I think that is, and that is going to allow Andrade to gain a lot of time. And Andrade on those freshest set of tyres, we know that he had good pace in qualifying, so maybe as that fuel comes out of the car, he'll be getting a bit more confident and trying to put Marcin under pressure. That train of cars, though, still battling quite heavily in further down the grid. Ruoff, though, might have some inquiries to answer for, as with that contact, Yonkers has ended up rejoining this battle. There's going to be no love lost between them as they head towards Melbourne Hairpin. Yonkers trying to dive towards the inside, and this time does look like he gets the move done cleanly. Ruoff not fighting against that one too hard, as then Toro Grossa and Caracas going side by side into Goddard's. Caracas, I'm assuming that at this point may have made his pit stop, potentially, unless he's running a very, very late strategy. As who's that going out the pit lane? I think that was a Struch, potentially. I think Jars Boski's in the pit lane as well, so he's rejoining just behind these guys. Caracas trying to go down the inside towards Crane and Curzan, is able to make use of that speed. We've also got Yonkers putting Pitchik under all sorts of pressure. Does he think about, sorry, in turn 4 he does. Pitchik trying to hold it on the outside. There's going to be a move that's going to allow Ruoff to go through as well. Pitchik, oh, losing it on the exit, does manage to just about hold on to the car and stop it going into the bridge, but getting all sorts of upset over the curbs. Turn 4, such a difficult place to go there, as Mark Toll is getting very fighty behind Ben Keys. We'll have to keep an eye on that battle as well. Mark Toll, we know, has been incredibly fast and will be desperately looking to make his way back towards at least a podium after such a strong early showing. In the meantime, though, Connor Wright continuing to show that fantastic pace. So the fastest lap of the race on the last lap with a 26.8. Mark Toll wasn't too far away from that, but it does look like that BMW of Connor Wright has some fantastic race pace from him. These guys still battling quite hard, but interested to see how Ben Keys is able to defend from the Porsche of Mark Toll. These cars going to be fast in different sections during these opening few corners, these fast corners. The Ferrari probably has the downforce and the power to be able to maintain a good gap, but when you start to get into the final sector with those acceleration zones, the Porsche is mighty as well. So just jumping back, Marcin still under a bit of pressure from Marlon, but not able to do anything just yet. Ruoff and Yonkers still battling, as then a Struch goes slightly wide. Does that allow Yonkers to maybe think about making a move as they head up towards McLean's? Thinks about the dive? No, not this time round. Struch still holding that position for the time being. Can Yonkers do anything as they head through Coppice? That looked like Yonkers had a much more confident line there through Coppice, and you would expect him to be the one with the pace. Closing down all the time then onto the gearbox of a Struch, not able to make a move just yet. Looking at the rear wing though, as Yonkers though coming under pressure potentially from Ruoff. Does Ruoff think about a dive? He's made that move, not successfully so far, but not just yet. And the Struch still able to hold on to that position for the time being. Let's have another look at the front. Mark Toll lost a bit of time there on the last lap. Wasn't they particularly good, so maybe getting a bit greedy in that final sector, pushing a bit too hard, losing him some time. See how these guys are getting on, battling for just outside the top 10, these positions. As if Garekas has made his pit stop, which I'm assuming that he must have done by this point, he's done well to maintain being just outside the top 10. Oh, that's a mistake there from a Struch, as Yonkers is going to be able to get past. Ruoff is going to be able to get past as well, and that was a very costly error there from Struch as he runs wide on the exit, and that loses you so much momentum as you then head up towards the top of the hill. Very, very costly error there from a Struch, and that drops him now quite significantly out of that battle. Meanwhile, Yang Gang coming under increasing pressure from Zorax, and we're not seeing the Porsches being quite as dominant as maybe we were expecting to see in this race after the performance that we saw in Tier 1. And again, if anything, that is a credit to the drivers in Tier 1 for making what can be a very tricky car to set up and extract the pace out of consistently during the course of the race, and make it work around a circuit that has such high commitment in order to be fast. So if anything, that is a credit to those guys in Tier 1, namely Luke Whitehead and Malinowski, that were very much at the pointy end of that grid yesterday, and Jade, of course, as well, moving across the Porsche this season, who went on to take the win. As Korekis, though, actually sets the fastest lap of the race, so clearly, definitely a man still to watch, as he is in P11, but you can see the positions for the tail end of that top 10 not too far away, and with the sort of pace that he's currently got, almost 4/10 of a second, actually was a clear second ahead of both of the drivers in front of him on the last lap. So Korekis then maybe still able to recover something from this race, as another driver that was looking very, very quick, and I think the only other driver to be in the 26s on the last lap was Tommy Rozier, who is a good couple of seconds away from Connor Wright. Runs a little bit wide on the exit there. What does he do there? 27.0, only a few thousandths faster than Connor there. So over 20 minutes left, and we'll have to see what Connor's able to do in the latter portion of this stint. But if anything, we saw that BMW come alive more as time went on, as Yang Gang and Zorax going side by side as they head towards Goddard's. Yang Gang maybe going a little bit deeper than he would have wanted there, but can use that acceleration from the Porsche there. As Zorax now looking to try to go towards the outside, getting cut off, but dives towards the inside potentially. Does he get left the room? No, he has the nose chopped off. I think he could have actually gone a bit deeper under braking there if he wanted to, but was a bit cautious being involved in contact, and that has allowed Korekis to get right onto the back of his car. And we'll see if Korekis then is able to make any sort of moves. You would have to think that that pace that we've seen Korekis show, it was another very, very fast time from him on the last lap. As in the meantime, we missed it, unfortunately. Mark Toll set the fastest lap of the race last lap and did get past Ben Keys, who did a 28.1, so I'm assuming maybe Ben made a mistake there to lose that position. So that maybe releases Mark Toll a bit and gets him back into the podium spots. Korekis, though, not able to make anything happen just yet, but does look extremely confident in that car. But we did see he got a drive-through before. He has to be careful to make sure he doesn't get another drive-through. Zorax very, very close. Oh, contact on the apex there. You can see the concertina effect. It's so easily done. Even Korekis, who's generally so good with racecraft and making sure to not make contact with other drivers, even getting caught out by it himself, as the driver ahead just closing up on the apex, and then just especially in these evening conditions aren't able to see exactly where the driver ahead of you is braking, and then it can also easily lead to contact. Fortunately, no one ended up going around in that example. Ruoff putting pressure onto Toro Grosso as the recovering Astruch is looking to try to get involved in that battle, set his fastest lap of the race on the last lap. I think Ruoff and Toro Grosso have been battling fairly heavily over these last few laps, as they have been lapping quite slowly. Can Ruoff think of doing anything towards McLean's? Gotta be careful, has already been involved in a couple of instances which I can only imagine will end up in stewards' inquiries, let alone maybe some penalties applied to his car. You see though, again, the difference between these cars. Able to close up going up the hill, that looks like that's where the Aston is very quick, but then the agility of that car just doesn't seem to be able to get the turn in through Coppice, but then gets good drive on the exit. Looks nicely set up though through the S's. Can he put Toro Grosso under any sort of pressure? Doesn't look like he's going to think about a dive there, but still firmly locked onto the gearbox of his car. See, looking ahead, does look like that gap between Rozier and Connor Wright has just come down. Well, actually, it's gone up over the last lap. It looks like it's come down since the pit stops, but Rozier lost half a second on that last lap, so definitely making a mistake and not making it any easier for his charge to close up. as Mark Toll was extremely fast a few laps ago. 26.4. That is 0.4 of a second clear of anyone else's effort, and I think the only driver other than Karekas to still be in the 26s at this point in time. And if Razir continues to make some mistakes, with just under 20 minutes left on the clock, Mark Toll might be able to close up to the back of him. We'll have to see how the tyre strategy side of things affects these guys, as Zorax again battling with Yan Gang. It does look like that Porsche of Yan is struggling just a bit, and Kareka still very much involved as Yan Gang gets a drive-through. Yan Gang gets a drive-through. I don't know if that was through the S's, as he's pulled completely aside. I assume maybe just to serve that drive-through straight away and not lose too much time overall. We'll have to see if Yang chooses to come into the pits straight away, and he does. So another victim of the track limits then at Donington Park. We saw it happen to Karekas, and now it has happened to the Porsche of Yan Gang. Karekas, though, has done a very good job of generally recovering, as he's now putting a decent amount of pressure onto the back of Zorax. Like-for-like cars battling here, as we've also got Yonkers trying to close in on this battle as well. And Yonkers, despite that contact, where he was a little bit of an innocent victim, I would suggest, in that Turn 1 incident with Ruoff, has done a good job of closing back towards the top 10, and overall has actually only lost a handful of positions. So, been a good recovery from him, but Karekas putting lots and lots of pressure onto the McLaren of Zorax. It's been a good showing so far from Zorax, by far his best result and race, but Karekas certainly a man on a mission and on a charge to recover positions after that drive-through penalty. He'll be very, very frustrated about that, because I genuinely think he was with a good, within a good shout of getting certainly a podium after starting P10, maybe even challenging for the race win. Also just keeping an eye at the front, a 26.5 on that last lap from Mark Tolster. He is flying. Tommy Razir did his best lap of the race ahead of him though on 26.7, and both of them were a reasonable margin faster than Connor Wright. So in this second portion of the race now, and you can see the gap between Connor and Tommy, and Mark Toll just flashing the lights across in the background. This is really not too much of a significant and incomprehensible margin for maybe a battle for the win to resume again. But a battle that we do very much have going on at the moment is Zorax and Karekas. Karekas has still been locked onto the gearbox there. He's so much more confident on the entry to Coppice there. He does lose a little bit on the exit. He's going to have to slipstream down towards the S's. Anything that he can do towards there. How do these two fare through the S's? That was a fantastic run, as Zorax already having to go defensive there towards the hairpin. Grantus Karekas trying to go around the outside. Can he make this one work? All going side by side there. Yonkers seeing if he can get involved in this as well in just a moment. Karekas still looking like he is towards the inside. Can he get it done? Going into Goddard. Zorax trying to hold it around the outside. Leaves him just enough room. A little bit contact in the middle of the corner. But Karekas is able to get a good run out of there. But I don't think it is done yet, as they're heading side by side towards Redgate now. Can Karekas make it work around the outside, trying to outbrake Zorax, as they are so close, as they now go through turn 2, and that's allowing Yonkers to get firmly onto the back of his car. And Karekas flashing the lights there. I think it was pretty fair racing, to be honest, between those guys. A little bit defensive there from Zorax as they go through turn 4. That might now compromise Karekas' exit and allow Yonkers to try going around the outside as they head up through Starkey's Bridge and towards McLean's. Karekas trying to go around the outside now. Zorax goes a little bit deep. That gives just a tiny car's width on the inside. Karekas can't make use of it. Yonkers now really locked into this fight. Karekas runs very deep there, almost tagging the back of Zorax there. Fantastic racing. I know we saw a flash of lights there from Krekis, but I think all in all, that was pretty hard but fair racing between them. Krekis showing his nose, but not able to do anything just yet. And Zorax, really, really strong and great showing of defensive racecraft here, as he looks to try to desperately hold on to that P9 position. Has been able to keep the current championship leader, the driver that hasn't finished the race, off the podium once this season so far. It's looking like today, though, that's extremely unlikely to continue. Zorax doing a brilliant job to hold him back, and Krekis hasn't been able to resume that challenge just yet. It's looking at the timings at the front again. Mark Toll very, very fast and is continuing to close. Only about 3-second gap as Krekis got great momentum on the exit of Redgate there, and he's now on the inside for the Corona Curves, now looking to try to go around the outside. Maybe the cutback through turn 4 gets a little bit squiffy on the exit though, and if anyone, Yonkers has got the momentum, and is he going to be able to do anything as they head up towards McLean's? A little bit too far back for him, but this battling between Krekis and Zorax has enabled him to completely close onto the back of these guys, and bearing in mind he's running a little bit wounded after that contact with Ruoff. I think Krekis' car might have a tiny bit of damage as well with the sort of the bumping that happened through the Melbourne hairpin, but Yonkers probably the most damage out of the three. You can see Krekis really giving it everything that he's got, but just not quite enough to be able to make a move for the time being. As Zorax though runs a little bit wide at the apex, does look like it gets a good drive though, as last lap there from Connor Wright at 28.0. It wasn't a particularly fast time either there from Razir, but Mark Toll 1.3 seconds faster than Connor Wright, and these guys, the way that they are coming together, Mark Toll driving faster than the pair of them, Razir looking quick and consistent as well, and you can see that gap, that margin that Connor Wright had is just dropping away. Maybe he's just, it could be as simple as he's run wide on an exit somewhere. As Connor Wright's got the drive-through. Connor Wright has got a drive-through. I imagine that maybe he was driving cautiously to try to avoid getting any more warnings. But that, well, another one of our race-winning contenders has got a drive-through penalty then. Disaster for the Van Wall SimSport cars. He will come into the pits and will now put Tommy Razir into the provisional #1 position. But look at that Porsche closing in on the background. It was another 26.9 there from Mark Toll, taking another couple of tenths out of Tommy Razir's. Got a few seconds though to make up if he wants to put a move onto that Porsche, but definitely has brought Mark back into the fight. Meanwhile, the battle for P9 still raging on as they head through Goddard. Zorax managing to hold on to that spot, but Krekis still definitely on the gearbox of the other McLaren, and Yonkers doesn't quite seem to have the outright pace of these guys. He closes up when they're battling hard, but unable to do too much. Where has Connor emerged actually? Connor, despite getting that drive-through penalty, has actually remained in front of his teammate Marlon. So obviously far from what he would have been hoping to achieve, but despite that, Marlon gets a big slide there as he heads through the entry of Coppice. Does hold on to it, but hasn't actually lost a great deal of positions, and I imagine that's probably due to the pit lane being fairly short in comparison to some of the other tracks that we go to, especially if you compare it to the likes of Spa. Drive-through at Spa is absolutely cataclysmic, almost puts you a lap behind anybody else, but Donington Park probably one of the shortest pit lanes on the calendar, and the GT configuration does mean that these guys use the entrance just after Goddard's hairpin. There is a configuration that actually allows you to cut through on this straight just coming up between Melbourne hairpin, and you'll see a section open up on the left-hand side there in that gap in the barriers. That is actually a cut-through that gets used for some other series with a quick entrance to the pit lane. But I think removes too many spots for the amount of cars that we have here in the GT series. So it would be even shorter if it was in that configuration. But I'm sure that Conor Wright will be quite grateful, Krekis as well, realistically, that if you are going to get a drive-through anywhere on the calendar, you do want it to be somewhere where it's not going to affect you quite so much. Krekis still putting lots and lots of pressure on Zorax. I have to say, this is a fantastic showing from Zorax as well. Great amount of racecraft and defense, and not making too many mistakes. So he parks his car in the middle of the circuit, heading towards Coppice now. Krekis has been very fast ahead. You can see so much more confidence on the entry, almost tagging the back of Zorax there. And does that give him an opportunity down towards the S's? Zorax thinks about defending the inside line. He realises he probably does not need to. Krekis glued now to the gearbox of that McLaren. You can see the McLaren just does get a little bit unsettled there through the S's chicane. It's so easy. Oh, is there contact there between the pair of them? Zorax just about does a good enough job to keep it pointing the right way as Yonkers has come back into this battle as well. Oh, doesn't quite manage to get aside Krekis before they get to Goddard, so they will stay in the same positions. Krekis could get a small penalty for that, though. We've seen it's a common error and mistake to happen between those two as oh no, I got confused there for a second. I thought we'd lost someone from our lead trio, but that was just because of Conor Wright's drive-through. But yeah, the battle there through that hairpin, it is so easy to just close up a little bit too much, and Zorax makes a mistake. We see a break in the armor, and is that going to allow Krekis to make a move? Zorax maybe goes, I thought he'd gone a bit too deep under brakes there, but does actually manage to hold on to it. So again, Zorax is making minor mistakes here and there, but just never quite enough for Krekis to be able to make a move. Also, just keeping an eye on the battle at the front. Tommy Razier, last lap, 26.1. Mark Toll, 26.8, consistently in those 26s. Recovering Conor Wright actually did a 26 there as well, so still good pace from that car, but just seemingly had it fall away from him, maybe pushing a bit harder now that he's probably got a bit more room for error on those track limit warnings. As, oh, Mark Toll pushing extremely hard there. You can see how much he wants to try to win. Got to be very careful though not to get a slow puncture by running too wide. Had a very, very good lead in the first end of this race and lost it all in the pits, seemingly through strategy. Is looking back a bit, we've got Christian Steinhauser and Alex Torregrossa battling quite hard as well. Yannick Ruoff just behind these guys, so the two BMWs battling quite hard. Does look like though Torregrossa has held onto this for now, so I'm going to check back in with the battle that's been raging on for so long now. Zorax has had to put an immense amount of defensive skill up here, and you can see the Krekis, he is continually faster through this section. Again, is he going to be able to do anything as they head towards the S's? It's just not a long enough straight for the slipstream to kick in these cars. 3 McLarens going through this section of the track, and there just isn't a great speed difference between them. Again, Krekis, he looks more confident on the entry of the corner, but just doesn't seem to be able to hook up a good exit. The car just gets a bit squirrely over the bumps as they head through the hairpin. It all closes up again. The Zorax, for one more time, is going to be able to hold on to that position as Christian Steinhauser, now another victim of the track warnings, has got himself a drive-through penalty, so that is going to remove him from this battle for P14. So the S's strikes again. Such a difficult section of the track when you're following cars, and he will immediately dive into the pits to serve that. So very disappointing for him. Meanwhile, we've got Jarzabowski and the Bentley of the Urus, and I think we've also got Matt York involved in this. Matt York trying to recover his way up the order after being spun around in some form or another on turn 1. Jarzabowski trying to go around the outside. Has he been able to pull that one off? It was a bit of a squirrely exit there from the Bentley, trying to carry that momentum down into the corner curves. Can he pull that one off? That's so sketchy. Oh, a little bit of lag there from the, well, there's a huge amount of lag actually from the Urus, and somehow he's ended up considerably down the order, as he's looking like he's doing something more akin to Tokyo Drift with that connection. But one way or another, he has lost the positions, both to as the Urus has sunk through the and is right onto the back of York again. So there's clearly some very major connection issues going on there, and I'm sure that will be looked into at some point later on. But as in the meantime, we missed the battle there between Korekas and Zorax. That's still charging on. Korekas seemingly has managed to get the move done. Yonka's right on the gearbox of Zorax now. Will he be able to do anything? He's generally been able to close up when these guys have been battling, but on raw pace he hasn't had too much to say about it. But that did look like a fairly strong exit there from him, as they now look to go down towards the Craner curves. Can he do anything? Does he think about sending a move down towards turn 4? Almost gets caught out under brakes there and runs wide on the exit, so that counts him out potentially for that battle and will allow Zorax to push on a bit. You can see the margins are so fine around this circuit. Ruoff and Toro Grossa still battling somewhat hard between those two guys. Ruoff does look like he's the quicker car of the two, and Steinhausen now removed from that battle after that drive-through, as Toro Grossa gets a little bit of a moment there as they head through McLean's. Ruoff, we know, had good pace. He was fighting near the front, but that car will be carrying possibly quite a considerable amount of damage at this point in time. Meanwhile, just checking in on the front again, you can see that gap between Mark Toll and Tommy Rozier, but Rozier responding well on that last lap. 0.05 of a second faster than what Mark Toll could achieve, and there will be 2 laps left to go on this battle, as Jarzabowski and Matt York now going side by side towards the hairpin. Matt York almost pinces the Ferrari on the entry to the corner, as they've got what looks like a slightly more stable connection of the Urus behind them. Matt York looking to try to make a move on the Ferrari. Can he get a cutback towards turn 1, use that V8 power? Doesn't look like it. We know that Ferrari has a good speed overall. We've also got Yang Gang looking to try to make a move on the Urus. He might be a little bit concerned about that connection, though, we saw from the Bentley. But it does look like he has got quite a nice bit of momentum down towards turn 4. See if he can carry that speed up the hill. It's probably the part of the circuit where the Porsche is maybe going to struggle that a little bit more in comparison to the grunt of the Bentley. Leaders also have now gone on to the final lap, and for the time being it is Rozier that is leading up front. That gap though has come down a bit. We'll just have a look towards these guys, and you can see once Rozier comes back into shot in a moment, you can see Mark has been able to close in just a bit more. Took another couple of tenths out of Rozier on that last lap. Is there anything that he can do? This is probably going to require Rozier to make a mistake if it is going to give Mark Toll an opportunity to win this race. Mark Toll, I think, actually went a bit wide there. Oh, in the meantime, I think contact there between Korekas and Makovkin. We'll see what happened between those two, and Korekas, very uncharacteristic mistake there from him getting into the back of that Bentley, and Makovkin, innocent victim there, as he's now under pressure from Zorax again. The leaders look like they're finishing the race in the positions they are in at the moment. Doesn't look like Zorax is going to be able to do too much in the meantime, so we shall look towards the front. It's been an up and down race for many drivers, but Razir, he started in second. He was P2 in the championship, but he's kept it consistent. He's done exactly what he needed to do to get his second win of the season. It becomes our first repeat winner to get the win here at Donington Park. Mark Toll flashing his lights. He'll probably be slightly disappointed with the result there. I'm sure he won't be the only one disappointed, though, as many victims, as Karekis goes a little bit deep through the Melbourne hairpin. Does that give Zorax the opportunity? Oh, Toro Grossa gets a drive-through on the final lap of the race. So that is going to, I think, translate to a 30-second penalty, which, if I'm not mistaken, is actually more costly than the drive-through itself. So that's disastrous from him. Zorax still very pleased with his result, and maybe even will gain a position as Karekis sends it into the wall. Very, very frustrating day for him. Makovkin will have something to say about that as well. What else have we got going on further down the field? Matt York wasn't able to make a move there in the end, and neither was Yang Gang able to get past Vioris. And I think then our final finishers that we've got coming around, we've got Steinhauser, suffered that drive-through. Shooter 80, I think maybe a PB result for him, but he'll be disappointed with how that finished in the end. And then Terminon will be our last finisher to cross the line and finish in 22nd, and Toro Grossa will get that 30-second penalty, which will see him drop to stone dead last. But that will be it then for Donington Park. What an absolutely extraordinary race, filled with attrition for a lot of drivers at late stages. We'll see if we can get anyone in for an interview, hopefully. See if that encourages anyone to come into the commentary box. But looking at the finishers then for the race, it would, as I've now brilliantly lost it on my screen, but it will be Tommy Razir that takes P1 ahead of Mark Toll to get his second podium. So good finishes, good consistent finishes for Mark Toll in this championship, but will be very, very frustrated to not leave here with the win. Got pole position, got the fastest lap, but wasn't able to take the win. Ben Keys, brilliant result there for him to come home in P3. Quite an uneventful race for him in the latter stages there, but did what he needed to do and got his podium. Oliars, good consistency again, manages to get P4 out of that. Connor Wright, well, seeing his comment in the chat there already about the chicane making him very angry, and understandably so. He was a victim of getting a drive-through after looking in such fine form at points in that race, but wasn't able to quite bring it together there at the end. We then got Marlon, his teammate, finishing behind him. We've also got cars leaving the server, which makes life slightly difficult. So I think we'll use this leaderboard instead. And Jan Climbs finishing in P7. Quite a quiet drive there for him. 15 seconds away from the top 6, but a good, strong showing from him. Karekis, a very eventful race. P8, good result considering the early drive-through he had to serve, and a good chance through the field, but I think maybe some penalties might come into that, along with the incidents he had with Makovkin and that minor contact with Zorax. So we'll have to see how that transpires. Zorax, brilliant showing from him. I think he might get P8 in the end after that race, which is a very good reward for him after such a fantastic showing of defense. Yonkers recovers to a top 10, maybe even into a P9 finish for him. After that contact with Ruoff earlier on. Makovkin might move up as well. 11th for him, not too bad. Astruch made some mistakes in his race. He will finish in P12. Jay Fang, quiet race for him in P13. Ruoff looked like he had strong pace. He did have strong pace, and it was a great showing in the Aston, but just too many mistakes, and I think he may be looking to drop even further down the order, potentially as well. Pitchik down in P15. Generally a quiet race, I think, for him, apart from when it all got a bit bunched up in that middle stage. Jarzbowski P16, Matt York recovering nicely up to P16, may also benefit from some penalties after whatever contact happened for him at the early stages of the race. Vioris, the laggy Anime Bentley, finishing in P18. Yan Gang finishing P19. Steinhauser 20th. Shooter 80 in 21st. Terminant in 22nd. And after that very late stage drive-through penalty, Torregrossa finishing in 23rd. And then our non-finishers, Cowley, Garbus. I don't recall seeing at what point Garbus left the race, but disappointing for him. Obviously was a bit of a contender at the pointy end of the field last week at Brands Hatch, as we've got some people leaving the server, but Cowley, Garbus Muscat, Meerveld, Benjamin King, Kamenev, Totev, Nico Yule and Goslin, our non-finishers for today's race. So a disappointing result for some of them, but definitely an eventful race nonetheless. So we'll see if we can get anybody into the comms box. It doesn't look like we've got anyone ready for interviews, sadly. So I think that unfortunately might end up being it for the stream. So we'll give it a couple more minutes, but after an incredibly exciting race up and down the field there, with obviously a lot of drivers suffering from the harsh track limits, the difficult challenge of this high commitment circuit, and the extra factor of it being a night race, we saw many drivers end up being the victim of the level that you have to push at to try to be competitive in this sort of field. But Tommy Rozier gets his second win of the season, and after Korekas's slightly poor result there, I have to see, I don't imagine the standings will have updated just yet, but I believe that there's quite a good chance, especially considering Korekas's penalty, I think there's quite a good chance that we might see Tommy Rozier jump to the top of the standings, which, considering they did have a bit of a disastrous race, I think, at the Nürburgring, to recover that has been a very good effort there from him. So he certainly brought himself firmly back into the challenge for the championship win. And Korekas, Mr. Consistency, I suppose the jinx was going to get to him eventually, and unfortunately that streak came to an end today and is definitely going to hurt him. Still banked in a decent amount of points in the early stages of the season, but not the strongest of performances from him today. And Mark Toll, again, each race he's attended, he's been extremely fast. He's been the pole sitter, had a 100% success rate for qualifying, but wasn't able to quite convert that race pace in the way that we would have expected after such a dominant drive at the Nürburgring. So it'd be interesting to see if he becomes a more regular attendee of the championship and what he can do in the latter stages of the season if he joins into more races. But a very, very eventful race today. By the looks of it, unfortunately, we're not going to have any interviews. So that being the case, I think we shall look to finish the stream there. So thank you everybody so much for watching round 4 here at Donington Park. We will be back again, I believe, in 2 weeks' time. So the AOR season will be going on for a week's break to give the drivers a little bit of time to recover, and then Tier 1 will resume on the 28th of February, and then we shall be on the 1st of March for Tier 2, and hopefully at that point Tim, my delightful co-commentator, will be back with me in the comms box to bring this broadcast to you. So hopefully see a lot of you again for the next round, and a round that I'm sure will be just as exciting as all of the action that we have had so far in Tier 2 this season. So thank you again so much for watching, but for tonight, it's goodbye.